Some people are natural storytellers, but all of us have stories to pass on. Stories from our lives, stories that our parents or grandparents told us, stories containing essential truths that we want our children or grandchildren to hear. Too many seniors never tell those stories for fear that nobody cares. Here's some perspective from people who understand the power that stories hold.
How are you doing? It's nice to see you all tonight. I'm going to tell you a story that happened 1,000 years ago when I was a child and on Martha's Vineyard. In the springtime,
For thousands of years, stories have served to connect generations, relating the morality, values, hopes, and dreams of one era to the people of the next.
Thank you, music lovers. Woo! If there's any musicians in the crowd, feel free to leave anytime that you want to.
In Jonesboro, Tennessee, the National Storytelling Festival and the International Storytelling Center celebrate the oral traditions of our past. Their goal is to revive the storytelling art and place it on the pedestal it once occupied.
34 years ago, it was decided by a visionary, a young man, Jimmy Neal Smith, here in Jonesboro, that we about lost the storytelling, that nobody did storytelling anymore. And so got together on a Sunday afternoon by the courthouse here and had storytelling.
The festival began in 1973 with about 60 people gathered around a hay wagon in front of the town courthouse. It has evolved into an event that draws more than 10,000 people from all over in the first weekend of every October.
I guess that this is one of the premier festivals that has had the emphasis has been on storytelling. There wasn't any music much tied to it. There wasn't any arts and crafts tied to it. Strictly for storytelling and storytelling enthusiasts. And then this being Tennessee's oldest town, you know, that added some of the intrigue to it.
Jonesboro is a little town of around 4,000 people. It is the oldest town in Tennessee, very devoted to its history and tradition, which is a wonderful fit, really, for the art of storytelling.
With the growth of the festival, the first and only center in the world dedicated to the tradition of storytelling, opened here in 1975.
All the storytelling people want to come here at least one time in their life. But once they come one time, then they become addicted to it, and they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And so it just continued to grow and grow until we finally moved out of under the protection of the basements of the churches and assembled in the tents outside. And that seemed to be an appropriate thing to do, and we got another tent, and then more people came, and more storytellers came out of the woodwork, and we continued to grow.
We have about 40 tellers here during the weekend. We have 22 featured tellers, which means that they perform throughout the 3-day weekend. And then we have several other special events such as Midnight Cabaret and Ghost Stories.
Some of the most prominently featured tellers are seniors. They bring both life experience and storytelling expertise to the festival stages.
I grew up in a family where people told a lot of stories. My grandfather and my aunt were wonderful storytellers. I used to work at a public library. Storytelling was the part of my job I liked the best. Some days it was the only part I liked. And so in 1978, I came here to the National Storytelling Festival and saw other people who called themselves professional storytellers and went away going, I could do that, and did.
Whiz, this is what I've been doing all my life as a traditional teller in my home over in Tucker's Knob. And so I became a part of this storytelling movement. And I worked early in the early festivals as a teller, and then later on I was on the board.
The storytellers who flock to Jonesboro have spent years cultivating their art. Their dedication to it runs deep.
The art of storytelling is an ancient art, and it's been passed down through generations and through cultures.
I could eat Nashville for Storytelling is the grandmother of everything we know. It has the greatest power to move and to heal of anything I have ever experienced.
One of the ways that
that people understand who they are is by telling their stories. And the ancients, as a matter of fact, would tell the same stories over and over again, you know, around the fire or whatever it was, if it was a village or a tribe or a group or a family.
Anyway, I've been working as Maynard's...
The festival storytellers draw from a variety of sources, ranging from the mythological.
And Maynard is very fond of stories with morals, especially. If a story does not have a moral, it is just mindless entertainment. So I would like to do traditional moose epic story that communicate traditional moose values. This is called Pegamoose and the Gorgonzola Medusa.
To the autobiographical.
I'm going to tell you a story that happened 1,000 years ago when I was a child and on Martha's Vineyard. In the springtime, oh, in the springtime, how we loved those nights. You know, when the Iceman lets go of the beautiful softening earth, the itch was upon us.
To the comical.
I said, Mama, if you could go anywhere in the world you wanted to and money was no object, where would you go? She said, upstairs to bed. Mama's not a traveler.
And always the personal.
It was a normal day. My kids were 2 and 4 at the time, and my son was beating his older sister over the head with a toy hammer. He wasn't picking favorites, he'd beaten himself over the head for a while too. My daughter, the more artistic type, was in the kitchen, squeezing margarine into sculpture shapes and sand painting with the sugar she had spilled all over the kitchen floor.
I think all storytellers do a whole variety. I mean, scary tales. I do a number of commissioned historical pieces, nonfiction pieces. I do stories from literature. But, I mean, right now, mostly I write my own stories about my life and about my kids.
A lot of my stories tend to deal with what I think of as being the importance of one individual's life.
I do selections from the world body of folklore and myth and fairy tale, and depends on what I'm interested in at the time when a story calls.
Storytelling is sort of like taking off your clothes in front of other people. Exactly how intimate you're willing to be depends upon who you're telling to and how receptive they are and whether or not you feel safe going a little deeper, asking them to go a little deeper into your life with you.
Storytelling of all the art forms, we can have paintings, and we can have sculpturing, we can have music and dance, and all the art forms. There's not a single art form that'll do all the things that storytelling will do.
Here to give us a better understanding of the storytelling art is Jimmy Neal Smith, the founder and president of the International Storytelling Center in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Mr. Smith is a Jonesboro native and has been at the epicenter of the American storytelling revival there since 1973. He has also served a 6-year term as Jonesboro's mayor. Mr. Smith, welcome to the Daily Apple.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So what inspired you to start the National Storytelling Festival?
Well, it began with a story.
Imagine that.
Yes. I was teaching school at a high school near Jonesboro, where I live. And I taught journalism, and I had my students with me in the car. And we were driving to a nearby town to print the school newspaper. And we had the radio on, and on the radio was a storyteller by the name of Jerry Clower from Yazoo City, Mississippi. And we were all nudging each other and slapping our knees and just really enjoying the story. And I turned to the students at that moment and I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could bring storytellers together to tell tales? And the idea just kind of floated away. But you know, that experience, even though hearing the stories over the radio was not the same as us talking and telling stories now, it was such a powerful experience.
But what makes a great storyteller in your mind?
Well, I always say that it's the difference between telling a story from the heart and telling a story from the head. And when it comes from the heart, it's authentic, it's real, it's genuine, And it's about who you are. And when it comes from the head, it means it's created. And it's just not the same.
So what is the difference between a professional storyteller and just someone telling a story?
Well, we're all storytellers, and we all live our lives through a network of stories. So you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller. Not everybody, however, is a performance storyteller. And so at that first festival, when we rolled an old wagon up in the shadow of the courthouse in 1973 and told stories at the first National Storytelling Festival, we celebrated stories and storytellers, but yet at the same time, we created the professional storyteller.
Fabulous.
And they now travel around the country telling stories.
That's unbelievable. Hang on one second. We're going to take a short break.
Okay.
It's time for another break, but don't go away. We'll be back shortly to take a look at the importance of sharing your own stories with those you know and love.
Who said an honest tale speeds best in being plainly told? A. William Shakespeare, B. O. Henry, or C. Ralph Waldo Emerson? Do you know the answer? It's A. William Shakespeare.
Welcome back to the Daily Apple. Here with me again to continue our exploration of storytelling is Jimmy Neal Smith, the founder and president of the International Storytelling Center in Jonesboro, Tennessee. What is the history? Tell me briefly what the history of storytelling is.
Well, you know, storytelling began with the beginning of time, because when the first fire was built, in which we warmed ourselves, we cooked and we ate, and we sang and we danced and we prayed, we told stories in that cave or in those early days. And we still do that. You know, we still gather around the water cooler.
Absolutely.
We sit at dinner and tell stories.
Right.
Long after the work has been done and the dishes are put away, we're telling stories. Or at least that was what it was for me when I was growing up.
Why are older storytellers such an important part of your festival?
Well, we realize the importance of people sharing their stories. But you know, when we get older, we have less opportunity to tell. And what we want to do is to give people the stage, if you will, to share their stories. What's more important than leaving a legacy of stories? Stories for your children, stories for your grandchildren, stories of who you are and why you are and how you became who you are, and to celebrate that.
Do you have any favorite stories that your grandparents told you?
Well, my grandmother was a great storyteller, and she was in her 80s, and my grandfather in his 80s, and he died. He was our patriarch. I always tell the story about the fact that when he died, everybody in the family owed him money. He was that kind of person. You know, we loved him. We loved him. And when he died, we lost our patriarch. And my grandmother called us together as a family. And she said to us, she said, "Let me tell you a story." She said, "I'll tell you a story about an old man who was dying. He was on his deathbed, and he asked for his children to come to him. And he asked each of his children to bring a stick. And they each did, and they gathered around his bedside. And he said, 'Bring me a stick.' And one of the children gave him a stick, and he snapped it in two. And he said, 'Now give me all of your sticks.' And each child passed his stick or her stick down to him. And he put the sticks together and formed a bundle. And he says, 'You know, I can't break this bundle.' So just as the old man could not break the bundle, as a family, now we've lost our grandfather and our father, stick together, be strong, you can't be broken." I never forgot that. She loved telling stories, and she loved communicating the power of her values, her experience, her wisdom.
I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story that you've told. What can other families do? What can other seniors do and families do to preserve this kind of history?
Well, first of all, don't let them die. Alex Haley said that, and he quoted some others, he said, you know, when an old person dies, it's like a library burned down. So when an old person dies, it means you've lost whatever you haven't saved. So save your stories. And we as younger adults, even our children, should record our elders. They're not going to be with us forever. Record our elders, save the stories, craft the stories and retell them. Don't let them die.
You know, my grandmother passed away this year, and when she would tell me the story, she seemed to get vibrant, and it was almost like she got healthier every time she passed a story down. Have you seen that? Do you think there are health benefits to storytelling?
Oh, I think so. And I think there are studies that have been done that said those people who tell their life experience stories before a medical procedure have better outcomes, have lower anxieties, and in general just survive the surgery much more powerfully.
Wow, what fabulous information. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.